Hello everyone, welcome to Asura Psych, and today I've got a video for you where I'm going to be answering a question that I saw in the comments of my last video. And I know I don't usually do that, but I thought it was kind of an interesting topic, so I wanted to talk about it. I'm going to put their name up on screen here because I can't pronounce it, and you'll see why. But the question is, hey Asura, could you make a video about INTJs' behavior in daily life? All of the stereotypes making INTJs some kind of robot or just cold humans with no humor make me doubt my type. So yeah, I think this is actually quite an interesting topic, and I want to talk a little bit about these stereotypes and maybe my kind of daily life as an INTJ. Let's get into it. So this question actually brings up some great points that I think are really interesting and important when you're talking about the INTJ personality type. And I kind of talk about these in one of my older videos, 5 Myths About the INTJ, and you can check that out if you want. But a lot of this comes from the idea that people tend to think of INTJs as more so judging dominant types, almost like introverted ENTJs is how the stereotypical INTJ tends to come off. When in reality, they are introverted intuitive dominants. They are introverted perceiving dominant types. The big misconception here is that introverted perceiving dominant types tend to be far more relaxed and laid back than they are given credit for, including the ISTJs as well. But specifically, the ITJs and the INTJ often have this air of kind of authority and efficiency associated with them because of their secondary extroverted thinking, and this is what is often easily shown to the world. As Briggs says in Gifts Differing, the introverted type can easily be mistyped for their secondary function because it is extroverted and is far more easily presented to the world. Now, this is why, in my opinion, it's easy for INTJs to come off as this harsh, critical type of person, because they're going to speak up when they see things that are incorrect or logically inconsistent or they think could be improved. But a lot of the time, other than that, they're really not going to be speaking up much about their own personal interests. So what are INTJs really like compared to the stereotypes that we tend to see in most of the personality community? Well, again, INTJs are going to be a lot more laid back than I think that they're given credit for. Most INTJs tend to be fairly relaxed, receptive people. Now, of course, you're going to have a wide, degree of variance here. There's going to be INTJs who are not as healthy and developed, who are going to be a little bit more judgmental and aggressive. But the more so stable INTJ tends to be far more on the relaxed, receptive, and even listening side because they are introverted perceiving dominant types. Now, the INTJ also tends to be very driven personally toward their personal goals. Now, unlike the ENTJ, who is very driven towards success in general, kind of climbing some sort of competency hierarchy or ranking list, the INTJ will view this as secondary compared to following their personal pursuits and the things that are interesting to them as an individual. Now, in the Jungian view, INTJs have both intuition and feeling in the introverted form, which is the conscious attitude. Now, this might be confusing because you might be thinking, well, isn't introverted feeling unconscious? But introverted feeling is part of the conscious attitude of introversion for the INTJ. So introverted intuition and introverted feeling are often the things that are most valuable to the INTJ and their interests. So they often find themselves putting a lot of time and effort in towards their personal introverted intuition interests or perceptions that are related to the introverted feeling, either morals or interests that they have as an individual. This relates back to the idea that INTJs are often seen as kind of introverted ENTJs. Again, where the ENTJ is going to be concerned with climbing some sort of hierarchical competency-related hierarchy related to the thing that they're interested in. They want to be objectively seen as skilled or competent in the field that they've chosen. The INTJ is instead more so interested in personal growth, and I would say aligns closer with the idea of personal mastery as their interest. They're trying to develop their personal skill as an individual, their personal competency in their interests, and the idea of being recognized objectively for that comes secondary to their desire to be skilled or adept in this certain thing. Now, this goes back to the idea of them having secondary extroverted thinking compared to dominant extroverted thinking. And you'll always have to remember that in the Jungian view, the secondary function is supportive to the dominant function. It exists to serve the dominant function, which is why the dominant is called the dominant function. And INTJs, despite having this stereotype of being very organized and efficient and effective, they will typically only employ these types of skills when they're engaging in something related to their introverted intuition goals / perceptions. They're not always going to be in this mode where they're like, go, 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 work, 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 achieve, achieve, achieve. They're more so going to be interested in applying those specific skills to the things that are interesting to them personally. So let me give a personal anecdotal example of how this type of thinking occurs within me as an individual. So let's look at my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is my secondary goal in life. My first goal in life is to become a clinical psychologist, and most of my serious extroverted thinking effort goes into that type of goal, things related to that, what I'm going to do to become a clinical psychologist one day. Now, YouTube gets the secondary share of that. But for me, organizing and structuring things is only helpful in so much as that it's something that I do to make sure I'm going to be able to get things done when I need them to be done, as long as I'm able to meet the deadlines that I set for myself. I'm not seeking to have the most efficient YouTube channel. I'm not seeking to have the most optimized way to produce videos. I'm not trying to record weeks in advance. Now, some INTJs might like to do that because YouTube may be one of their primary goals in life. It might be something that they're putting even more effort into. But for example, how I schedule my life is I give myself 3 or 4 hours twice a week to think of and record a video. And that allows me to have some creative freedom, because for me, as an introverted intuitive dominant type, my perceptions are more important. The things that interest me are more important than producing the content when it needs to be produced or having things prepared. I want to make sure that the videos that I produce are reflective of my interests and me as a person and the things that I think are interesting to talk about. So instead of having things backlogged for weeks on end and scheduling things, I often allow myself a specific scheduled period of time to work on something that is currently interesting to me. And that's how I, as an individual, work through my YouTube scheduling. I think that's the primary difference between secondary extroverted thinking compared to dominant extroverted thinking. Most of the time, secondary extroverted thinking types will be a little bit more loose when it comes to the exactness of making sure that they're going to get things done when they need to be done, and employing that efficiency in the same way. So for me, when it was school, for example, I often told myself that I had specific days of the week where I would do specific classes and get my schoolwork for that class done. It wasn't a time of day schedule type thing. It wasn't, I'm going to come home and at exactly 5 p.m. I'm going to start working on school and I'll do it from 5 to 7. It was, no, I'm going to have it done on Friday by the end of Friday. As long as it's done by that time period, I can do it anytime that day, and it's more loosely scheduled. And that allows me to have a little bit more freedom as an individual to work with things the way that I want to work with them. Because for me, it's more important that it gets done in a way that is helpful and interesting to me than it be done in the best, most efficient way possible. The differences in extroverted thinking between, say, the judging dominant ENTJ and the INTJ can also cause the INTJ to be far more relaxed when it comes to having free time and not using that free time for something efficient in the same way that you're likely to find with an ENTJ. ENTJs can often find themselves using all of their given time to be doing something that is going to help them achieve their goal in some way. They are very likely to be exceptionally driven, work, 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 go, go, go type of people, especially if they've got something on their mind. Now, INTJs tend to be like this once they've decided that something is worth pursuing for them, but only towards those specific things. INTJs are not going to be freely employing their extroverted thinking to their entire life. It's not going to be something that they're always using on everything they interact with. Their primary way of interacting with the world is introverted intuition, and they tend to be far more relaxed and laid back because of this. So they usually tend to have much more free time where they can pursue their perceptions and interests rather than fill that time with some sort of extroverted thinking type efficiency. They like to be able to follow what is interesting to them and do what they like and learn about the things that they want to learn about in a more so free-flowing state compared to the extroverted thinking dominant ENTJ. As I mentioned earlier in the video, it's very easy for other people to see INTJs as kind of judgmental, critical people, because the only time that they're likely to speak up if they're not really engaged in some sort of conversation is maybe if they notice some sort of flaw via extroverted thinking, or they feel like they can improve something, and this can make them come off as cold and aloof to others because they're only chiming in when they feel like there's something productive that they can say. Now, it's not that INTJs are actually critical people, it's just that people usually only get to see that critical side because INTJs tend to be such private people. If you know INTJs on a personal level, you'll often find that they're actually relatively welcoming people as introverted perceiving dominant types. They're usually going to be okay at communication. They're not going to struggle as much as the thinking dominant types who have repressed feeling, because INTJs are going to be a little bit more in tune with the emotions of others, even if they don't have extroverted feeling. Remember, as as Jung said, the introverted intuitive types are the actual empaths, at least in his view, and they're the ones who tend to read body language the best and understand these types of things. The INTJ is just simply not going to be one who's going to respond to these signals in the same way that the extroverted feeling INFJ is likely to. The INTJ is more so going to respond to body language and what they're reading in others on an introverted feeling type way. How does this impact me or my perceptions about this person compared to what does this mean for the communication between us, and how can I use this to kind of improve that social harmony aspect? So one final thing I want to talk about in relation to INTJ stereotypes and their kind of daily life is this idea that INTJs are always these very serious people because they come off as very serious because, one, they're very introverted. I think they're probably the most introverted of types alongside the INTPs. And also, when people get to see them or talk to them, they're usually expressing their extroverted thinking function. So they come off as very serious and professional. But what people fail to realize is that intuitive dominants are just that. They're intuitive dominants. And intuition usually has an appreciation and an enjoyment of the absurd in some nature. And INTJs can actually be very laid-back, humorous people. If you get to know an INTJ on a personal level, you'll likely find that they're far more willing to be open, relaxed, and even funny about certain topics when they feel that they're interacting with somebody that they know on a personal or close level, or somebody that they can trust to some degree. INTJs don't tend to always be such serious people. Now, they can be. That's again, it's one of those things where there's variance. You're going to have more serious INTJs than others. But I think if you compared INTJs to, say, the extroverted thinking dominant types, you'd often find that the INTJs are far more willing to have a little bit more of a laid-back, relaxed approach to life compared to the ENTJ, who tends to be a little bit more straightforward and professional in their communication style. So to kind of sum all of this up, the INTJ tends to be a very laid-back, receptive, and perceptive person because they are usually going to be more so interested in following their passions and pursuits as an individual, the things that come off as interesting to them, compared to using their extroverted thinking on a regular basis. Now, when INTJs have attached themselves to something related to introverted intuition and even introverted feeling, you'll find that they're going to be very willing to employ this extroverted thinking and will come off much more like an extroverted thinking dominant type when they are in this mindset, in this state. When an INTJ is pursuing this goal, you will see them bulldoze with their extroverted thinking, and this can come off as critical and harsh to other people. But if you talk to an INTJ and you give them a chance and you actually talk to them one-on-one, I think that you'll find that most of them tend to be a lot more relaxed than they're given credit for. They are often not these hypercritical people that people tend to think of them as, and I think it's important that this stereotype be changed over time, because Briggs never described the INTJ as some sort of hypercritical person, and Jung certainly didn't describe the introverted intuitives this way. They were known for being relaxed, laid back, perceptive, wanting to kind of watch things unfold over time. That was one of their primary traits, is watching the patterns of time unfold and kind of seeing how things relate to each other. And I think that people overlook this in favor of the thinking function. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion. I'd love to hear your opinions on your life as an INTJ. If you are an INTJ or any other type, what is your life like on a daily basis? What are some stereotypes that you agree or disagree with? I would like to remind everybody that I do have typing sessions available at my website, asurpsych.com, if you're interested in working with me to find out what your personality type is and what that means for you. This has been Asur at Asur Psych. Have a good one.